You never want to be late to the party. Well, in real life you may want to turn up fashionably late. When it comes to the consumer marketplace though, you want to be the first, or at least among the first wave. There were many audible gasps when, during Ubisoft's E3 press conference, the company announced it was developing a Toys to Life game. These weren't the good gasps of joyful astonishment though. The collective reaction to this news was incredulity, wondering if the hierarchy at Ubisoft had lost its mind. This announcement was after Disney Infinity had been cancelled. It was a few months before LEGO Dimensions would have the same fate. Even Activision's Skylander franchise had been put on indefinite hiatus. So, has Ubisoft lost the plot, or is Starlink Battle for Atlas the game to breathe new life into the Toys to Life genre? Starlink tells the story of the crew of the Equinox 4. They're exploring the Atlas star system, seeking answers about the origin of Judge, an alien who crashed on Earth. While in Atlas, they are attacked by a group known as the Forgotten Legion. The team's leader, Victor St. Grand, is kidnapped, and the remaining crew has to find a way to rescue him and deal with the Legion. This is made harder by the fact that the Equinox crash lands on the nearby planet of Kyrite. Before being able to rescue your leader, you must find a way to restore your ship to orbit. You do this by helping out the local residents and finding Nova, which powers the engines of the Equinox. All of this is just an excuse to enter into the open world gameplay. Well, I say open world, but really we're talking open galaxy, as there are 7 planets that you can travel to and explore. Once the map is opened up, you are free to participate in any events that you find. There are allies to find, people to befriend, areas to clear of enemies, structures to destroy, and giant foes to defeat. Ubisoft is known for their open world games, and this ticks nearly all the same boxes as their other titles. You may not have to climb a big tower to show the local area on the map. Become allies with a local observatory though, and the map will become more detailed. There are collectibles, side missions, outposts to take over, and most of the other staples that you would associate with open world games. Of course, all of this open world gameplay would be worthless if the core flying and combat gameplay were rubbish. Fortunately, the team at Ubisoft Toronto have done a great job here. Controlling your spaceship feels intuitive, whether you're piloting your vessel through the 3-dimensional realm of space or the more 2-dimensional surface of a planet. The controls just work. The combat can be quite forgiving, with the game helping you considerably with your aiming. The pace of the battles makes this quite welcome though. You're often fighting multiple enemies, and it would become overwhelming if that assistance wasn't there. Speaking of combat, it's quite a strategic affair here. You really want to balance your weapons against the enemies you're facing. Most of your weapons have an elemental component: fire, ice, gravity, levitation. If you're up against a fire giant, then you want to use ice weaponry, as your fire-based arsenal will have minimal effect. If you're faced with a crushed cyclops, then you're best served using the levitator. Fortunately, you can not only equip 2 weapons at a time, one on each wing, but you can also easily swap weapons mid-battle. Just pause the game and then adjust your weaponry as required. This is particularly welcome later on in the campaign, as you'll have encounters that feature all types of elemental enemies. The actual campaign is not that long. There are just a handful of campaign missions. However, you'll have to complete a lot of objectives to unlock these. I put around 38 hours into the game and have completed about 80% of the game. There are a couple of side campaigns, but most of your time will be spent clearing the planets of any sign of the Legion. It is worth completely clearing the planets of the Legion, as any planet left with remnants of your enemy will eventually be under threat again. You will also often have to go back to planets to clear them of primes. These large enemies are intimidating at first, but by the end of the game, us annihilating them with considerable ease. The most notable side campaign of the game is of course the Switch exclusive Star Fox content. You can actually play through the entire game as Fox. He does have his own individual missions though. The setup for his inclusion is that he's tracked his nemesis Wolf O'Donnell to the Atlas system. Fox and his cohorts, Falco, Peppy and Slippy, set about finding Wolf and stopping his evil machinations. All of this fits surprisingly well into the Starlink IP. The Star Fox characters are implemented nicely into the videos as well, either with bits at the start of a video or just being a character in the background while the main characters talk. Many commentators have spoken about how this is like a Star Fox game in its own right. There is some truth to this, but the main thing is that the publicity-grabbing addition of Fox doesn't overwhelm the game, nor is it distracting. This is an ambitious game for the Switch hardware, and for the most part, it handles the workload well. There was an occasional frame rate drop when there was a lot, and it had to be a lot, happening on screen. There's also a fair bit of pop-up as you're flying through the galaxy and the planet's surfaces. This always felt quite reasonable though. It's far enough away on the planets that you never have to suddenly dodge out of the way of something. In space, you can't realistically expect the game to render every single piece of space debris that you would encounter between planets until you get closer to them. The game runs just as well in handheld mode as it does on the TV. There is a co-op mode, which you can activate at any time during a playthrough, and this also worked very well. Visually, the game is solid, but not spectacular. The developers have chosen a cartoony style for the visuals, which gives them more leeway in what they put on screen. The ships look great, but have enough differences between them so you can instantly point yours out. The planets have their own themes and colour schemes, so you never feel like the worlds are the same. Some enemies look similar, but you can easily distinguish them so you know which strategy will be best suited for them. You'll encounter similar bases and encampments over and over again, but show me an open world that isn't guilty of the same thing, other than those made by Rockstar, of course. You'll notice that I haven't commented on the toys at any point in this review. The reason for this is that we were sent a code for the digital deluxe version of the game. This basically granted access to every ship, character and weapon in the game. The standard digital edition easily has everything you'll need to complete the game. When it comes to the physical version of the game, my biggest concern is the price. You're going to want at least 2 ships and the 4 elemental varieties of weapons to complete the campaign. This means you're going to be looking at a sizable investment in the game to get the most out of it. Obviously this is the same with all Toys to Life games, but when you get everything digitally for around the same price as the starter pack of the physical version, it does make you question the viability of the physical version of Starlink. I have to admit though, that R-Wing model looks so good. Starlink Battle for Atlas absolutely consumed my life for the last 4 days. While this is mainly because I was rushing through it to write this review, I enjoyed nearly every moment of my 38 hours with the game. The minute-by-minute gameplay may not be anything particularly new, but it's done in a fresh and fun way. The open world, or galaxy, is pretty much what you expect from Ubisoft. That may turn some people off, for many others it's a good thing though. The story has enough to keep you engaged and the inclusion of Star Fox is inspired. I don't think this is the game that will reboot the Toys to Life genre, but I believe it has enough to live on as a standard IP. I, for one, would be delighted to play through more adventures in the Starlink universe.